that the teaching of the Buddha is not necessarily being learned or studied in the Pali language, but any kinds of language we also can understand, we can study, not only just Pali language, but somehow to understand the Pali is also important. Even though actually just nowadays very few people really understand the Pali. And today I would like to discuss one of important teachings of the Buddha, especially with regard to the Sammaditthi, or the right view. Why it is very important? Because this right view has been mentioned in the scripture, in the teaching, in the discourses of the Buddha, is to be considered as like map, as a map. This is the map that shows us how about our life. So the Sammaditthi is a kind of map that shows us about our life. Whether we get suffering or happiness, this should be understood by this kind of map, the Sammaditthi. And the Sammaditthi is also stated by the Buddha in certain discourse or in Samyutta Nikaya, just like it is stated as Puri Jawang, Sammaditthi Puri Jawang. It is compared to chariot. So when we are practicing the Dhamma, it is like we are going with the chariot, going to certain destination by means of the chariot. But in order that chariot can go smoothly without any obstacles in front, so there must be a person to go first to clear the path. So that person who goes first to clear the path is called Sammaditthi, or the right view. So the right view is stated as Puri Jawang. That means the one who runs the first. Before that chariot is going smoothly without any obstacle to the destination, there is a person who runs the first to clear the path. Otherwise, there will be various kinds of obstacles. So likewise, when we are practicing the teaching, practicing the Dhamma, the first thing that we have to cultivate, we have to understand is that Sammaditthi, that we should have the right view. Without right view, everything can be wrong. But when we have the right view, everything can be right. So it is also mentioned in one discourse, Mahat Sattari Sakasutta. So the Buddha said, when a person is endued with right view, so naturally such a person has the right intention. The right view is Sammaditthi, right intention is Samma Sankappa. So when a person is possessing the right view, so naturally such a person has the right intention. What one intends is right. And when a person has the right intention or right thought, so such a person also has the right speech. So he's talking, he's using the verbal. So it is right because of the view and the intentions are right. So what he's talking is also right. Not only just the right speech, but also because of this right view, right intention, such a person also has the right bodily conduct. That is a Samma Kammanta. So Samma Vaca, Samma Kammanta. When a person has the right speech and right action, the bodily action, such a person also has the right livelihood. What is the reason? Because when we are talking about the livelihood, it is all about speech and bodily action. You see, when you are like trading, what we are doing, it is about the speech. It is about the action, the bodily action. When you really protect your speech and your action, so all the livelihood that you do is also right. And that comes from the right view as the first. So right view brings about right intention, and again right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And when the person has right view until that livelihood, and just always, all the time, make an effort to do the good things, to protect the speech, the action, and the mental is also to be protected well. So that is what actually called as a right effort. So right effort is how to develop the wholesome state and how to reduce, how to eliminate the unwholesome state. So when the person has the right view, right intention, and protecting the speech, the bodily actions, and also the livelihood, that itself is actually the right effort. So when the person make an effort mindfully in each and every moment to do the good thing, to lessen, to destroy the bad things, that is what it is called as the right mindfulness. So from Samavayama as a right effort, it brings about the right mindfulness, Samasati. And when the person, by means of these 7 factors, from the Samaditi, Sama Sankappa, Sama Vacha, Sama Kamanta, Sama Ajiva, Sama Vayama, Sama Sati, with these 7 factors, practice well, develop well, and such a person ultimately gains the calmness of mind, the concentrated mind. That concentration, that calmness of mind is what it is called as Samma Samadhi. So this right concentration could be gained, could happen only by means developing these 7 factors. And it is started from the right view. So this right view is a kind of foundation. The foundation to bring all our action becoming right. So this right view is very important. And the first thing, when we are talking about the right view, what is the right view in this, especially with regard to our day-to-day life? So we have to understand the Buddha's teaching is not about, like for example, now we are talking about the science. For example, we are talking about whether this universe is limited or unlimited. The Buddha is not about that. The Buddha, the Buddhism, the teachings of Buddha is not about how to understand this universe, whether it is limited or unlimited. It is not about how to understand whether this earth is being rounded or flat, for example. But the Buddha's teaching is only about ourselves. It is about our action. It is about our suffering and happiness. It is about our problem in the day-to-day life. This is the Buddha's teaching. So the Buddha's teaching is talking about that our life is actually created by ourselves. This is the first thing. So we are the creator of our world. We are the creator of our happiness and suffering. What we are doing, everything what we do in our life, that is the creator of our happiness and suffering. And this is what the Buddha said as the law of karma or karma niyama. So the first thing that we have to understand when we are talking about the right view that we need to cultivate, we need to develop, is that we have to have the belief, we have to have the faith in this law of karma, that our action is our creator, that our action is the creator of our happiness and suffering. And that is the first thing that we have to understand. But somehow, when we are talking about the karma, in Pali it is called karma, but in Sanskrit it is called karma. And the term karma is also very popular among the society, not only just among Buddhists. Somehow, this law of karma is also to be understood well. Because sometimes, some people, even though talking a lot about the karma, but somehow don't understand what karma is, especially in connection to the Buddha's teaching. And even during the time of the Buddha, there are some other religious teachers, some other religious teaching, which also believing in the law of karma. But somehow after being cross-checked with the Buddha's teaching, it is quite different. For example, there are some Brahmins in the times of the Buddha, they also thought about the law of karma. They define the karma. What is the action? And what is the good and bad action? According to them, the so-called good action is when that action being performed, being done for the sake of God Creator. When it is aligned with the God will, God Creator, even it is involving the slaughter of animals, that is considered to be good karma, good action. When you are killing the animals, and that is with the purpose of offering to the God Creator, that is considered to be the good karma. They believe in karma, but the definitions of the good karma is totally different from what the Buddha mentioned, from what the Buddha teaches. It is karma, but somehow it is different. And the second one, during the time of the Buddha also, has a person, has a teacher. His name is Niganta Nyatabuddha, one of the very famous teachers during his time. And he teaches about the karma. But in his understanding, all what we experience now in the present life, whether it is suffering or it is happiness, it is all because of only the past action. The names of the doctrine is the Ube Kata Hetu Wada. So the what is the doctrine? Hetu, the cause. So all the happiness and suffering is due to only the past action. If I ask you whether this kind of view is in line with Buddhism or it is different? Huh? Different. It is different because it says that only the past action which produce our happiness and suffering. While in Buddhism, what we experience now, whether sufferings or happiness, it is not only about because of the past action, but also this very present action. Our present choices, intention also brings about our happiness and suffering now, not only because of the past action. But in the teaching of Jaina, that is a Niganta Nyatabuddha, mentions about that everything that now we experience is due to the past action. Ube Kata Hetu Wada. So this is quite different from Buddhism. And again, most of the teacher or most of the believers in the times of the Buddha, when they are talking about this law of karma, of course they also believe because of this karma, this action, there will be the continuation of life after death. That means they also believe in rebirth. Of course, that is the same as in Buddhism. But somehow, they also believe in the permanent entity. They believe in the soul, in the Atma, which wanders from birth to another birth. And this permanent entity is the one which is responsible for the action, and also the same one which is responsible for the fruit of the action. In Buddhism, also of course, by means of this karma, there will be the life after death, the rebirth. But somehow, in the process of rebirth, in the process of life, death and birth and death or rebirth, there is no any permanent entity, no any soul. So that's why even this is the same rebirth because of the karma, but somehow it is different from the view of Buddhism or the teachings of the Buddha. So therefore, even though we believe in karma, we believe in rebirth, but somehow this belief, this faith, with this understanding is quite different from the understanding of rebirth, of karma, in other different religious teachings. And even now, in the society, mostly people also believing in karma. But somehow, most of the people, except of course Buddhists, most of the people when they talk about the karma, usually they only just, indicate the karma in the negative sense. For example, when a certain person get accident, get unpleasant experience, and then other will say, oh, this is because of the karma, right? This is your karma. But somehow when a person gets success, get the pleasant experience, get happiness, no one says this is the karma. But in Buddhism, whether we experience a pleasant or unpleasant happening in our life, these all because of our action, because of our karma. So this is how the karma is different. So we have to understand what is the karma in Buddhism. To get the right view, to possess the right view with regard to this karma, we have to understand what the karma in Buddhism. So of course the karma, the same like in other religious teaching, means the action. The karma is the action. All our action, intentional action, that is the karma. And each and every karma, mostly, why is it mostly? Because in Buddhism also has a kind of karma, it is called ahosi karma, which doesn't have any power to give the result. But mostly, the so-called karma, each and every action, each and every karma can give the result. And the Buddha has compared with the one statement, one verse. He mentioned like this: Yadisang wapade bijang, tadisang labade balang. Just as the seed is sown, even so, the fruit is gained. Kalyana kari ca kalyanang, papa kari ca papakang. The good doer gets happiness, the evil doer gets suffering. Just like the seed is sown, so likewise the fruit is reaped, the fruit is gained, labhate. So when, for example, when we sow the paddy seed, so there will be the paddy, we will get the paddy, right? Not the coconut, not the corn, but the paddy. So likewise, when we sow the corn seed, there will be the corn that we get, that we gain, not other fruits. So likewise, when we are doing the good things, there will be the happiness for our life. When we are doing the bad things, we will get the suffering in our life. So this simile is given by the Buddha to understand the formula that all the action bring about the fruit, and it depends on that action itself. The good action brings about happiness, the bad action brings about suffering. But now the question is that, what is actually the good action and the bad action? Because the definitions of the good and bad action can be different. Just like I mentioned earlier, there is a certain teaching mentioning that the good action is being defined when that action is performed from the sake of something else, not for ourselves, but for something else, to offer to something else, to external force. But in Buddhism, what is the good action and what is the bad action? In summary, the so-called good action, even that action after being performed brings about benefit for oneself and to others. When it brings about the benefit, the happiness for oneself and to others, it is very life and the life after death, that is the good action, that is a wholesome action. But on the contrary, when that action after being performed, after being done, but then it brings harmful to oneself and to the others, and that is the bad action. That is an evil, unwholesome action. Yeah. So not all people can understand. Okay. Yes. Yeah. You can translate it. Yeah. And I can speak Indonesia very well.
Oh yeah, please.
No, you can translate.
Maaf, mohon maaf ya, saya berusaha untuk merangkum aja tadi yang Bante utarakan ya. Segala sesuatu itu untuk melakukan sesuatu itu diperlukan dari pertamanya itu sama diti, yaitu pandangan benar. Jadi dengan adanya pandangan benar, maka langkah-langkah selanjutnya untuk menjalankan jalan mulia berunsur 8 itu baru semuanya baru bisa dilaksanakan dengan baik dan sempurna. Seperti ibaratnya sama tinggi atau pandangan benar itu seperti ada chariot ya Bante ya, chariot kusir ya Bante ya.
Pandangan benar itu seperti orang yang lari di depan.
Oh iya, chariot. Maksudnya orang yang paling depan gitu sebagai starter gitu ya. Jadinya orang yang paling depan ini memastikan bahwa jalannya itu semuanya bersih, bebas hambatan, jadi baru semuanya bisa lancar, seluruh kereta kudanya itu baru bisa lancar jalan ya. Dan sering kali kita melihat banyak orang yang merasa mengerti bahwa oh ini agama, tapi sebetulnya kamal dari sisi Buddhis itu tidak seperti itu. Misalnya dicontohkan tadi yang saya sangat suka, yaitu misalnya kaum Niganta nyata Buddha yang mengatakan bahwa segala sesuatu itu hanya dari kama masa lalu. Jadi kalau begitu buat apa gitu? Maksudnya semua yang terjadi sekarang ini karena hanya kama masa lalu, dan tentunya itu tidak benar ya.
Okay. Yeah. So the so-called good action is the action which brings about happiness for oneself and to the others in this life and the future life. But the bad action is called so because of that brings about the harmful to oneself and to the others in this very present and in the future after death. So when that happens, that is a bad, evil, unwholesome action. But now the question is that, again, what is the action brings about the happiness or benefit, and what are the action brings about the suffering? So the Buddha said, any kinds of action, when it is done based on the three unwholesome roots, that is greed, hatred, and delusion, all these action, any kinds of action, being based on these three unwholesome rules, when you are doing something based on the greed, based on the hatred, based on the delusion, not understanding what is right, what is wrong, what is beneficial, what is harmful, this action is the bad action, evil, unwholesome action, which definitely brings about suffering. You want to translate?
Lalu pertanyaannya, apakah itu adalah kusala dan akusala ya, kusala kama. Jadi kusala itu adalah perbuatan atau segala tindakan atau pikiran atau perucapan yang memberikan kebahagiaan bagi diri sendiri dan bagi orang lain. Bagaimana itu kita bisa melihatnya jika itu terbebas dari kebencian, terbebas dari keserakahan, dan terbebas dari delusi.
And of course, when the action based on non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, just now mentioned, it is the good action. When you are performing any deed without any greed, without any hatred, without any delusion, you really understand with wisdom what we are doing, that is the good action. So, based on lobha, dosa, and moha is a bad action, brings about the suffering, but based on alobha, adosa, amoha is a good action and brings about happiness. That is also should be understood as a principle when we are doing any kinds of action. Whether this action, what I do, based on the greed, hatred, or delusion, or it is free from these unwholesome roots. When it is understood that this is based on the three unwholesome roots, we have to stop right there. But when it is based on the freedom from these three unwholesome roots, we have to continue this action that we are doing.
Actually, it's easier than that, but Bhante needs to continue because because what people think, oh, it's free from delusion, but it's actually free from delusion. It's not. It's actually still deluded. So Bhante needs to explain a little bit on it.
But somehow, understanding in brief about lobha, dosa, and moha, the greed, hatred, and delusion, sometimes it is not easy. Because again, perhaps some people thought the definitions of lobha is quite different, definition of hatred is also different, and moha is also different. Because I know that some people sometimes think that, for example, when we are talking about the lobha, about the greed, perhaps some people thought when you are doing like in the Sunday, in the Saturday, rather than you are at home doing nothing, it is better to go out, make a party, to do a lot of pleasurable things, in a sensual pleasure. It is considered to be the better way than living in the home, right? Because I know that. But somehow in Buddhism, even that itself is also lobha, the greed, the action based on greed. So therefore, in order to understand in more detail, the Buddha mentioned directly about the action itself. When that action, there are 10 kinds of action to be considered as akusala kamapata, unwholesome action. When you are doing one of these 10 unwholesome actions, it is considered to be the action based either from lobha, or dosa, or moha. The first one, killing. So whatever it is, whatever the reason is, the so-called killing is unwholesome action. It can be based on the greed, hatred, or delusion. Even though in Abhidhamma, the so-called killing is based on the hatred, but somehow before that, even someone can kill because of the greed. So the greed, hatred, and delusion is the cause by the person, by the people, to the killing. So that is the first one. As the akusala kamapata, the first akusala kamapata. And the second one is stealing, taking what is not given. You have to understand, whatever the reason that we do when it is stealing, it is because of greed, hatred, and delusion. And the third one is that doing sexual misconduct. You have the wife, you have the husband, and then you're still looking at others, looking for others. For example, you are doing the sexual misconduct. That is, whatever the reason is, that is actually because of the lobha, dosa, and moha. That is a evil, unwholesome action. So these three actions considered to be the bodily unwholesome action. And again, there are 4 unwholesome action verbally. The first, telling lie. Whatever the reason, when it is about telling lie, that is also unwholesome action. And the second is that speaking in harsh word, out of the hatred, of course. Somehow, sometime either harsh, the husband, if it is not from the hatred, then sometimes as the parents to discipline the children, sometimes using the little bit harsh word, but somehow it is not because of the hatred. That's okay. But when this harsh word is due to the hatred, that's also considered to be akusala kamapata. And then the third unwholesome speech is when the talk is actually unbeneficial. You are talking something unbeneficial, talking here and there, without any benefits for you, for others, that is also considered to be based on loba, dosa, and moha. That is a bad action, or evil, unwholesome action. And the fourth one is that the thought or the speech which brings about the disharmony. The community which is already harmonious, and then you talk here and there and make disharmony, that is also considered to be unwholesome evil action. There are 4 kinds of speech. To understand that, to understand whether my speech is right or my speech is wrong. When we talk this one of these 4 kinds of speech, that means this is a wrong speech. This is a micca vaca. And again, there are 3 mental actions that we have to understand. The first is abhija. Abhija is a kind of greed itself. In Indonesia, sometimes it is translated as tamak, ketamakan. You know tamak, like the greed. And the second, of course, the vyapada, the ill will. That is also the hatred itself. The hate, the hatred, the anger, disliking, the ill will. That is the second one. And the third one is the wrong view itself. When we have the wrong view, not understanding about what is right, what is wrong, just like, for example, even though we believe in karma, but somehow mistakenly taking the good as the bad, bad as the good, that is also the wrong view. So these 10 actions considered to be akusala kamapata, unwholesome action. So these 10 actions are based on loba, dosa, and moha. So when we doing something, but the video is among these 10 actions, we have to stop right here, because we know this is actually the bad action, the evil action that bring about suffering to us and also to others. Not only in this life, but also in the future after death. But on the contrary, when a person practicing or performing any action, not to kill, not to steal, not to doing sexual misconduct, not to do 4 kinds of speech, not to have the greed, hatred, and to have the right view. So those actions are considered to be wholesome action based on aloba, adosa, amoha. And those actions will bring about the benefits in the present and in the future life. Avoiding the killing, the stealing, sexual misconduct, avoiding the telling lie, the harsh word, the unbeneficial word, and about the talk brings about disharmony, and avoiding the greed, hatred, and having or possessing the right view. These 10 actions should be considered as wholesome action or kusala kamapata, dasa kusala kamapata. So when we are performing one of these actions, that should be understood as the good action. So when we are doing, and then we have to continue. When we understand this itself is considered to be the right view, we have the right view, and this right view will bring about the happiness in this very present life and also the future life. That is how we have to define what the karma, what is a good, what is bad.
Ya. Jadi ini kan kita sering mendengar ya, kita bilang kita harus melakukannya tanpa ada kebencian, keserakahan, dan kebodohan ya, delusi ya. Tapi itu kan kadang-kadang suka dibilang subjektif, yang dibilang itu berdasarkan kebencian, mungkin orang lain merasa tidak, itu tidak berdasarkan kebencian. Jadi Bhante merincikan ada 10 macam. Jadi gampangnya ini yang pertama, tidak boleh membunuh. Jadi kan Bhante ada ngomong sebelumnya, ada orang yang mengatakan bahwa nggak apa-apa membunuh makhluk hidup yang lain, asalkan ini untuk dipersembahkan misalnya untuk dewa kami atau Tuhan kami. Itu tidak benar. Bagi Buddhism, apapun sebabnya, pembunuhan itu adalah disebabkan oleh kebencian, keserakahan atau kebodohan. Ya. Yang kedua, mencuri. Apapun sebabnya, mencuri itu juga adalah aku salah kama kata. Yang ketiga adalah berbuat asusila atau berzina. Yang keempat, ini agak sulit ini 4 semuanya ini berhubungan dengan kama yang berdasarkan dengan pembicaraan, yaitu berkata-kata yang salah, berkata-kata yang tidak benar atau berbohong. Yang kedua, bergunjing atau bergosip ya Bante ya.
Boleh.
Yang ketiga adalah beromong kosong. Yang keempat, saya kebalik ini Bante. Yang keempat adalah berkata-kata yang kasar ya. Dan kemudian yang 3 terakhir yaitu adalah yang pertama ketamakan atau abija, yang kedua adalah kebencian siapa ya Bante, dan yang ketiga adalah pandangan salah itu sendiri. Dan jika kita menghindari 10 macam ini, nah itu baru kita terbebas dari kebencian, dosa, and then loba atau ke greed atau ketamakan yang Bante.
Bodohan.
Loba Bante, loba.
Ya, greed.
Keserakaan, atau yang ketiga delusion atau moha, delusi.
So this is the first thing that you have to understand about the karma. But of course, another thing is that just like Nigata mentioned, the only factor which brings about happiness and suffering is the only past action. But in Buddhism, not only about the past. Of course, the past action also influence our life. But somehow, the very important one is the present action. The present one. We do not know about the past. How much we have done the good action, how many we have done the bad action, we do not know. But the present action, we exactly know. And this is actually what is most important. The Buddha said it is not the Buddha, but somehow in commentary literature it is mentioned about the Upatambaka Karma. Upatambaka Karma is the action which support the past action. And also mentioning about the Upachedaka Karma, the action which cut off the past action. What is the meaning? That is about the present action. For example, when in the present life we are doing various kinds of the good action, these very good action become the support for the good action in the past to give the fruit. Understand? We have done, we do not know how many good actions in the past, but somehow, when in the present life we are doing, we accumulate a lot of good action in the present life, and these action become the support for the good past action to produce the fruit in the present life. That is Upatambaka Karma. But at the same time, this good action also can become the cutting off the bad action in the past. So the bad action in the past will not produce any fruit because of being cut off with this good action in the present life. So this is very important. But also in the same way, when in the present life we accumulate the bad action, we do aku salakamapata, we accumulate, and then this present aku salakamapata, the bad action, also become the support for the bad action in the past to produce the fruit in the present life, and it becomes a upachedaka, become the cutting off for the good past action to give the fruits in the present life. So understanding this, what we have to do, the most important is that how in this present life we have to accumulate as much as possible the good action. About the past, we do not know how many good actions we have done, how many bad actions we have done, but somehow the present life, we know what we have to do. And this present life, whatever we do, become the support for the past. become the cutting off for the action in the past. So this is also very important, understanding about this karma, and quite different from the teaching of Niganta Nyata Buddha. Ya betul.
Bagi saya ini sebenarnya upatambaka kama dan upacedaka kama atau kama pendukung, kama pendukung dan kama penghambat itu bagi saya ya itu sebagai pertama kali waktu mengenal Buddhism itu bagi saya itu sebagai angin segar bagi saya, karena kita nggak bakalan maksudnya cuma berdasarkan kama masa lalu aja gitu ya. Jadi dengan adanya upatambaka kama misalnya itu akan memberikan pupuk bagi misalnya tanaman padi kita ya untuk lebih subur. Jadi yang berbuah itu memberikan kesempatan bahwa yang berbuah itu adalah yang baik-baik. Dan upacedaka itu akan memotong atau tidak memberikan kesempatan untuk kama buruk yang pernah kita lakukan di masa lampau untuk berbuah. Demikian pula dengan upatambaka dan upacedaka jika kita melakukan dasa aku salah kamapata. Kalau kita melakukan dasa aku salah kamapata, maka upatambaka kama itu akan memberikan pupuk buat pembutihannya gitu ya, buat sesuatu yang buruk untuk lebih berbuah lagi. Dan itu memberikan hambatan bagi kama buruk kama baik yang telah kita lakukan di masa lampau untuk berbuah. Begitu. Jadi kita harus yang kita bisa manage, yang kita bisa lakukan adalah selalu memberikan pupuk yang benar kepada dengan menghindari dasa aku salah kama bata. Terima kasih.
Yeah. So I still have to speak a lot, but somehow the time. Yeah. Little more. You know that the teaching on karma is very important in Buddhism, because this also becomes the guide for us to always, reminding us to do the good things, so that while we are wandering in the cycles of birth and death, we can have the happiness. At least we can be reborn in the heavenly world or somehow in the good destination. But somehow the main teachings of the Buddha ultimately is not about the karma. Even the karma is actually the hindrance. What is the reason? Because as long as we have this karma, there will be the result, or the vipaka, the fruit, the phala. As long as we have the result, there will be the life after death. That means we have to be reborn. We have to continue our life in this cycle of rebirth, death and birth and death. All the time like that. Even though sometimes, because of this good action, we can be reborn in the heavenly world, in the Brahma world, and so on. But some of the so-called rebirth, the so-called samsaric life, the so-called the round of the cycle of the rebirth, the death and birth, is actually suffering. So the suffering is due to the samsaric life, the cycles of birth and death. And the cycles of birth and death is because of this vipaka, the result of our action, and this vipaka is because of the karma. So the karma is actually the cause of suffering. So that's why when we come back to the story of the Buddha, when he was still an unenlightened person, as the Bodhisattva under the Bodhi tree, in the first verse of the night, what he attained? He attained the Pubbe Diwa Sanusatinyana, the knowledge, understanding about the past life, that somehow the so-called being like us has wandered in the cycles of birth and death, uncountable lives in the past, and that will be continued in the future. But then, the second verse of the night, the Bodhisattva, we say the Bodhisattva because not yet attained the Buddhahood, he realized that the cycles of birth and death, while the being wandering in the cycles of birth and death, sometimes being born in the hell, sometimes in the hungry ghost world, sometimes as an animal, sometimes as a human, sometimes as a deva. All this because of the karma, because of the essence, because of karma. And at that time, this unenlightened being, the Bodhisattva, continue to understand, continue to find out. If that is so, that means the cycles of birth and death, because of this karma, it is suffering. So therefore, in the last verse of the night, at that time, the Bodhisattva realized the Four Noble Truths, understanding this is suffering. As long as we are wandering in the cycles of birth and death, this is suffering. So again, he tried to find out what is the cause of these cycles of birth and death, including what is the cause of karma. The cause of karma, the cause of these cycles of birth and death is none other than craving, the tanha. So in order to eliminate this suffering and then attain the cessation of suffering, such a person, anyone, should eliminate its cause, should eliminate this tanha itself, the craving. So the craving is the driving force for the person to always do the karma. That is craving. Because of the craving, we always do the karma, we always do the action. And then we wander in the cycles of birth and death. And then, at that time, this Bodhisattva also tried to understand what is actually, is there any path to eliminate this suffering? And then he found out the path is only one, that is the Noble Eightfold Path, starting from Samadhi. By understanding, by developing this Noble Eightfold Path is the only way to destroy the suffering. And it is also the way how to understand the suffering, the way how to eliminate the cause of suffering, and also the way how to realize the cessation of suffering. This only Noble Eightfold Path. So now what we have to do with regard to the teachings of the Buddha is none other than to practice, to develop the Noble Eightfold Path. Of course, as long as we are in this cycles of birth and death, even we are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, that is also the karma. That is the action. But the Buddha told us, karma kayang sangvatati. That is the action, that is the karma. But this karma which leads to the cessation of karma itself. What is that? The Noble Eightfold Path. So the Noble Eightfold Path is the karma, it's a kind of karma. But that karma is very special. The action which ultimately leads to the cessation of karma itself. So this is what we have to do. Understanding the karma, that means understanding the suffering. Understanding the suffering, we have to find out what is the cause of suffering, that is a craving. So we have to make an effort how to eliminate the suffering, to attain the cessation of suffering by means of practicing, developing the Noble Eightfold Path. And this Noble Eightfold Path, of course, that is the action itself. But this action brings about the cessation of action itself. In the same time, of course, it also brings about the cessation of the cycles of birth and death, the cessation of suffering. And this is also what we have to understand when we are cultivating the right view according to the Buddha's teaching, so that our life will be guided with this right view. So this right view is just like a map to understand where the suffering comes and to which place or to which, we can say, which thing that we have to lead ourselves to be free from suffering. And that's only because of we have the samadhi, the right view. That's why the right view is very important for us. Thank you very much.